The formal gathering in the Velrani royal court was tense with unspoken desperation. King Torak stood before the assembled nobles and warriors, his daughter Princess Sira standing slightly apart, isolated even in the crowded hall. "I ask again," the king said, his voice carrying both authority and plea, "is there no one brave enough to marry my daughter? She is of royal blood. Marriage to her would bring honor, alliance with the throne, and significant political advantage. But I will not hide the truth, she has a condition that others find challenging." The gathered Velrani remained silent. Warriors looked away. Nobles made excuses or studied the floor. Princess Sira's condition was well known. She involuntarily emitted low-level energy disruptions when stressed or emotional. It wasn't dangerous, caused no lasting harm, but it was uncomfortable. Those near her experienced headaches, disorientation, a sense of physical unease that made extended proximity difficult. In Velrani culture, this was seen as a curse, a fundamental flaw. Warriors wouldn't marry her because they feared such a condition made her unsuitable for bearing strong heirs. Nobles wouldn't marry her because of the social stigma, and because being near her was genuinely uncomfortable. She'd been isolated most of her life, brilliant and capable, but treated as burden and shame to the royal family. Marcus Webb, a human diplomat attending as an observer to interspecies relations, watched the proceedings with growing confusion. He knew something significant was happening, but didn't understand the full context. He leaned toward a Velrani colleague. "What's happening exactly? Why is the king making this public plea?" "Princess Sira's condition. She emits energy that causes discomfort to those around her. She's been refused by dozens of potential suitors. The king is desperate, she's of age, should have been married years ago, but no one will accept her. He's essentially begging for anyone brave enough to tolerate her condition." "The energy she emits, is it dangerous?" "No, just uncomfortable. Causes headaches, disorientation. Not life-threatening, but constant exposure is difficult for Velrani. It's seen as a curse." Marcus studied Princess Sira, standing isolated even in her father's court. She looked resigned, clearly expecting another round of rejections. "Could I meet her before making any decision?" The Velrani colleague looked shocked. "You're considering, you can't be serious." "I'd like to meet her and understand the situation properly before deciding anything." Arrangements were made. Marcus was brought to a private chamber where Princess Sira waited, clearly expecting another brief, uncomfortable interview followed by polite refusal. "You're the human who asked to meet me," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I'll explain my condition honestly so you can make an informed decision to refuse like everyone else. When I'm stressed or emotional, I emit energy that causes discomfort to those near me, headaches, disorientation, physical unease. I can't control it. I've tried for years. It's not dangerous, but Velrani find it intolerable. I understand if you refuse, everyone does. May I sit and talk with you for a while? I'd like to get to know you beyond just the medical situation." She was surprised but agreed. They talked for over an hour, about her education, her interests in diplomatic relations and interspecies policy, her frustration at being isolated despite having skills that could serve her people. She was brilliant, Marcus realized. Educated, thoughtful, clearly lonely but trying to maintain dignity. The energy disruption was noticeable. Marcus felt a mild headache developing, a slight sense of disorientation. It was uncomfortable but not unbearable. He'd had worse headaches from lack of sleep or poor nutrition. After the conversation, Marcus returned to the king. "I'll marry your daughter if she's willing to accept me." The court erupted in shocked murmurs. King Torak looked stunned but deeply grateful. Other Velrani were confused. Why would anyone voluntarily accept someone with her condition? Marcus's human colleagues pulled him aside urgently. "Do you understand what you're agreeing to? Living with constant physical discomfort, the social stigma in Velrani society. I met her. She's intelligent, kind, and has been treated terribly because of a condition she can't control." The discomfort is manageable. I've had worse headaches from dehydration. And I don't care about Velrani's social stigma. I care about not leaving someone isolated and rejected when I could choose differently. But you'll be living with constant discomfort. Constant mild discomfort. That's a small price for partnership with someone remarkable. Marcus met with Princess Sira privately before any formal arrangements proceeded. I'm willing to marry you if you're willing. But I want you to know, I'm not doing this out of pity or for political advantage. I'm doing it because I met you, talked with you, and saw someone remarkable who's been treated unjustly. You deserve better than isolation and rejection. Sira was suspicious, clearly expecting betrayal or abandonment. You'll change your mind. Once you experience the constant discomfort, once you understand the social consequences of marrying someone with my condition. I won't. I'm making this choice with full understanding. Your condition causes mild discomfort that I can manage. That's a small price for partnership with someone intelligent, capable, and interesting. But why? Why would you choose this when everyone else refuses? Because courage isn't about dominating enemies or demonstrating physical strength. It's about choosing what's right even when it's uncomfortable or socially unpopular. Everyone else refused you because it was easier, because they prioritized their comfort over seeing your worth. I'm choosing you because it's right, and because I see the person they've all been too uncomfortable to recognize. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Maybe both, but I'm also certain, if you're willing, I'd be honored to be your husband. Sira struggled with emotions she'd long suppressed, hope mixed with fear of inevitable disappointment. I'm willing, but I warn you, you'll face discomfort and social judgment. Don't say I didn't make that clear. I hear you, I'm choosing this anyway. The marriage ceremony proceeded with full royal formality. Velrani nobility attended, required by protocol, but many were clearly uncomfortable, both literally and socially. Marcus remained beside Sira throughout the lengthy ceremony, showing no outward sign of the discomfort he must be experiencing from extended proximity to her energy emissions. Over the following months, they developed genuine partnership. Sira was amazed that Marcus didn't treat her as a burden. He adapted to the mild but constant discomfort, learned to manage it with pain medication and breaks when needed, never complained or blamed her for something she couldn't control. They discovered shared interests, both fascinated by interspecies diplomacy, both enjoying intellectual discussions about policy and cultural differences. They had genuine compatibility beyond the political marriage arrangement. Marcus helped Sira develop techniques to manage her condition. Breathing exercises and meditation practices from human tradition helped reduce the stress that triggered stronger disruptions. It didn't eliminate the condition, but reduced its severity significantly. More importantly, Marcus's complete acceptance helped reduce Sira's overall stress levels. For the first time in her life, she had someone who didn't treat her as defective or burdensome. That psychological relief reduced how often and how intensely the disruptions occurred. The Velrani court noticed the change. Princess Sira seemed happier, more confident. Her condition was less severe than it had been when she was isolated and constantly stressed by rejection. Some began quietly questioning whether the issue was truly the condition itself, or whether their rejection and isolation had created a feedback loop that made it worse. A few younger Velrani began suggesting that perhaps those with her condition deserved better treatment, that isolation and rejection might be cruel rather than necessary. Conservative elements resisted. The condition was still a curse, still made someone unsuitable for normal partnership. One human's tolerance didn't change fundamental reality. But cracks had appeared in the absolute certainty that had justified Princess Sira's isolation. 6 months after the marriage, a political situation emerged that required Princess Sira's specific expertise. Complex negotiations with multiple species regarding trade routes and territorial boundaries. exactly the kind of intricate diplomatic work she'd been trained for but never allowed to perform. When the king proposed sending Sira to lead the negotiations, several nobles objected. She can't represent us in such important negotiations. Her condition, the other species will be uncomfortable, it will compromise our position. Marcus, now formally part of the royal family, cut them off. Her condition causes mild discomfort that most species adapt to quickly. Her diplomatic skills are exceptional, better than anyone else you could send. If you're too uncomfortable to work with her, that's your limitation, not hers. I'll accompany her to the negotiations if protocol allows, but she's the most qualified person for this role. The king, seeing an opportunity to both utilize his daughter's talents and prove her worth, agreed. The negotiations lasted 2 weeks. Sira proved herself brilliant, managing competing interests, finding creative compromises, understanding the nuanced positions of multiple species with different cultural frameworks. The other species involved in negotiations were far less bothered by her energy emissions than Velrani were. Some barely noticed. Others adapted within days. None treated it as disqualifying flaw. When Sira and Marcus returned with a successful treaty, the Velrani court had to acknowledge her achievement. Marcus addressed the assembled nobles directly. Your princess has been isolated and rejected her entire life because of a condition that causes minor, manageable discomfort. You've wasted her considerable talents, caused her enormous suffering, and justified it by calling it tradition or necessity. She just proved she's one of your most capable diplomats. Other species accepted her condition far more easily than you do. The issue was never that her condition made her unsuitable. The issue is that you were unwilling to accept slight discomfort in exchange for recognizing her actual worth. That's not strength or maintaining standards. That's cruelty disguised as tradition. I stepped forward to marry her not because I'm braver than you, but because I was willing to be slightly uncomfortable in order to do what was right. That shouldn't be remarkable. It should be basic decency. The speech created controversy. Some Velrani were offended by a human criticizing their cultural practices. Others, particularly younger generations, began openly questioning whether their treatment of those with Sira's condition was justified. The story ended with Sira and Marcus having built genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. The social stigma around her condition hadn't disappeared, but it had been challenged in ways that created space for change. The human who'd stepped forward when no one else would have demonstrated something profound. That true courage isn't about dominating enemies or demonstrating physical strength. It's about choosing compassion over convenience, accepting discomfort to do what's right, and recognizing worth that others are too prejudiced or uncomfortable to see. Princess Sira, isolated and rejected for years, had found not just a husband but a genuine partner who saw her as a person rather than as her condition. And that partnership, built on Marcus's choice to step forward when everyone else refused, had begun challenging an entire culture's assumptions about worth, suitability, and what actually constitutes courage. The question, "Is there no one brave enough to marry my daughter?" had been answered not by a warrior demonstrating strength, but by a human diplomat demonstrating that real bravery is choosing someone everyone else has abandoned, and that true strength lies in compassion rather than in dominance.